Assalamualaikum and hello guys, my name is HaiqalRahiman. I've been supervised by Dr. Shakira binti Hashim to do a project called Game-Based Learning Depressions. My project is a game-based learning that contains elements of depression studies. It is a project that purposely to make people understand more about the depression and the hidden details of the depression. This game contains a full story mode called Story Driven. A story driven is a video game where a player must control the main character in the game based on their options selection has been given. Each option is very important that it could make a future outcomes towards the player MC in the video game. In this project, player will take place as the main character who are depressed by going through his daily routine. There will be too much impact that can happen towards the main character that is affected by a choice that a player made. This outcome will affect the ending of the stories. With this function in the video game, player will experiment every choice to see the outcomes and will understanding more about depression studies and hopefully encourage them to help people who are having this emotion disease. Next, we are going to problem statement. There's a two problem statement that I state, which is the first one is suicide rate rise every year. World Health Organization on 17 June 2019 state that every year 703,000 people take their own life and there are many more people who attempt suicide. Every suicide is a tragedy that affects families, communities, and entire countries and has long-lasting effects on the people left behind. This shows that the world, even though we have a camp, a talk show, and a therapy to prevent these depressions, emotion toward people, the rate is still increasing every single year until now. The next problem will be the lack of understanding depression illness. There's so many people in this world that yet still doesn't know and understanding about depressions. They only know about depression is just an emotion of people having a sad day. Research that be made by Interpret Mental Illness 20 April 2020, yet it is still an illness that many people do not understand. People talk about mental illness much more than they used to. Even so, there is still a stigma attached to a mental health, a stigma that prevents many people from being open about depression. If you have a friend with depression, it can be difficult to know what can you do to help them. With that problem statement, we come with project objective, which is the first one is to study depression subjects with video games. Second one will be to design and develop a video game with depression. And the third one will be to test the usability of video game. My project scope will be the purpose of it is to teach people about depressions through a video game. Since there's a lot of activities that people make that can teach people with depression, I would suggest to make a video game that never once made before. And my target user will be teenager and young people who are 15 to 29 years old. Next will be project significance. The first one will be to develop a more efficient and interesting game-based learning with depression studies. Next will be to help people with mental illness conditions and encourage people to help for those who are depressed. The third one is to teach and show people with negative moods and unwanted behaviors of the character. Next, we move to literature review. This idea of the title, it came from the informative. The informative is a type of media that contains a lot of information. It can tell people through media such as news, learning games, and YouTube tutorial videos. Based on Felix Torres on 2020, he stated that depression is a common and serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel and the way you think and the way you act. According to Gavin Cahill, games have been used as a learning tool for centuries. Chess was used to teach strategic thinking as far back as the Middle Age war And the game of Kriegspiel was invented in 1812 specially to teach Prussian official strategy. Next is the comparison between other related video games. I chose 3 video games that are similar to my project. The first will be Minecraft. Minecraft is a very popular video game and it's a game-based learning tool. It does containing a learning aspect where people learn how to survive with nothing in the world. But unfortunately, the video game doesn't have depression studies applied, and also it doesn't have any story in the background. Next will be Life is Strange. It's a video game story-driven containing a depression studies applied, but it's not a learning aspect game-based learning video game. And the last one will be The Last of Us, a very popular video game for the first one and the second game that came out last year. It does not contain learning aspects. It does not have a lot of depression studies applied to it, but it have a story based and a story driven genre towards the game that actually looks very nice to become a reference to my game. Now, with this comparison, it shows that by reference to this kind of game, the proposed project will be succeed each of the game element that it needs to become a video game that contain depression, which is learning aspects, depression studies applied, game engine, story lore, and the genre will be story driven. Next will be research methodology. The research methodology that I use is GDLC, stands for Game Development Life Cycle. It starts with idea and story, conceptuals and design, technical analysis, development, testing, and finally deployment. This is the formulation framework. The first objective is to study depression subjects with video games, and the methodology of it is idea and story. The activities will be done is define project title, define problem statement, identifying problem statement, identify objective, scope, and requirement research, and the last one is draft storyboard based on the information gained. The output will be list of objective, problem statement, scope, significance, and the story of the flow game. Next objective will be to design and develop a video game about depression. In this objective, there's 3 phase methodology. The first is game design. In this game design, the activity will be character and environment development and game data. It can produce a player character model and NPC, stands for non-playable character model. Second will be the features to help the video game be interesting to play. The features such as inventory, the status of the player, and the game database. Next phase will be technical requirement analysis, which is the activity will be 3D modeling and texturing, come from game design, character and environment development, and animation and sound. With this, it produces software suitable to use and a pre-plan developing a video game. With a pre-plan developing a video game, it can choose a different software that are very suitable based on what we planning, based on what I plan. Next phase will be programming and developing. In this programming and developing activities is game character and environment, game patterns and architecture, and game engine. With this, the output will be executing all the data, art, sound, and code. It also makes a 3D model that can be put inside the video game. And the last one will be script clubbing all the behavioral functions, which is it combines all the elements in the pre-planned developing game, becoming a real video game. Last will be to test the usability of the video game. The first will be testing, which is the activity is test video game with a selection of a small group of the video game tester. The second is collecting results from a video game tester. The output will be is testing results are provided, and the result based on performance, functional, and structure testing are provided too. Deployment, which is the next methodology phase, is usability testing, compatibility testing, and debug. It produces application deployment on online file share which is HIO, notify, and the second one will be maintenance and future update or content, where there is an amendment towards the bug on the video game, or there's the future content that will added in the video game later on. With that, thank you very much for listening to my presentation.